Good morning, evening, afternoon, everyone, depending upon wherever you are joining us from. A warm welcome to this SBL InFocus webinar support for December 2025 exams. I hope I am audible to all of you. My name is Hassan and I work as Education Partner Support Manager at ACCA. Our session today focuses on Make Your Marks, quick wins, and study strategies to help you learn how to get these marks you can secure quick and with smart exam techniques and focused practice. Andrew Moore has joined us today to deliver this session and help explore effective exam techniques, discover smart strategies dealing with time management during the exam, talking about what and how to focus on studies and practice during the last few weeks before your exams. Andrew is a qualified chartered accountant at PwC and was with Kaplan for more than 10 years. He is now an expert tutor for advanced financial management and strategic business leader and works with ACCA to support students, learners in their exams, as well as offering his own online courses. He is known for his clear, concise teaching methods, which allow students to feel calm and confident. Andrew, along with another fellow expert tutor, Ben Wilson, has recently launched a YouTube channel called Club SBL, and they will be posting some good resources before December 2025 exams. So you may also check those out as well. Now, during the session, Andrew will also be taking your live questions that will come from you into the Q&A box. But before I hand things over, I would like to take you through a few quick housekeeping items. So in front of you, at the bottom of your screen, there are a number of buttons that you can use. One of these is that make sure both slide and the media player icons are selected so you have a view of both throughout the webinar, both on the slides as well as on the media player so that you can see Andrew as well. Use the chat function to engage with fellow participants and to some extent to wherever necessary with Andrew as well. But we would like to make it clear that do not share your personal information, whether that be your phone number, email address, or anything within the chat, as that is not allowed. Look out for an icon that resembles like a file and click on this to have useful resources that we have uploaded as part of this webinar. Feel free to move things, arrange them on the screen as you wish and as you are comfortable with. And if during the session your visual gets stuck or the voice quality deteriorates, just make sure to refresh in and come back. Since you have registered for this webinar, you will get an email tomorrow with all the details and also how to watch the recording. So let me once again repeat that this webinar is being recorded, and if during the session you face any technical difficulties, that's not an issue. You can watch the recording later on. Now, before I finally hand over to Andrew, just last but not the least, that we may not be able to respond to all the questions that come from you. However, we try our level best to respond to as many as possible. Send your questions through the Q&A box, make them concise, clear, and very much related to the SBL exam that you are going to take in December 2025. So without any further ado, let me hand over to Andrew. Andrew, over to you.
Thanks a lot, Hassan. Welcome along, everyone. Thanks to everyone who said hi in the attendee chat at the start as well. Nice to see some of you again that I've helped to pass AFM, including a prize winner, so that was good. So yeah, my name's Andrew Mower, as Hassan said, working with ACCA as an expert tutor for SBL now, as well as AFM. So it's really exciting. I love SBL. I love strategy papers. I've taught them for years. And yeah, I'm really passionate today to help you guys get over the line with SBL. So in this webinar, what are we going to be doing? Let's have a quick look at the agenda for today. So we're going to be looking at, to begin with, some exam technique. And I'm going to show you some examples from real recent exams. So rather than me just talking at you and saying, make sure you do this, make sure you do that, I'm going to give you some examples. And I'm going to work those in with some examiner comments. So from recent examiner reports, common pet hates of the SBL examiner, things that students always do wrong, I'm going to show you those and we're going to fix it so you guys don't make that mistake. We're going to look at some smarter strategies, some specific things you can do when you're writing your answers to make them a lot better. And a lot of the time, they're so quick and easy to fix that it's just a moment of going, oh, okay, I'll do that from now on. And you watch your marks increase as a result. So we'll go through those. We'll think about time management as well. I saw some of you in the chat at the start talking about timings. So we need to think about that, making sure you do answer every single part of the exam. And then towards the end, I'll give you an outline of what to do over the next 2 to 3 weeks before your exam. And at the end, there will be a Q&A. So I'll go through your questions. As Hassan said, I won't be able to get through all of them. It's great to see so many of you attending live, but unfortunately, I won't be able to answer every single question. But I'll get through as many as I can at the end and leave you feeling like you're prepared for the exam. Okay, so that's that. We're going to start by looking at some exam technique. Now, before we even get into this, I want to give you a quick quote from the examining team. And it's demonstration of technical knowledge or explanation of theory does not score marks in the SBL exam. So just reciting theory, just explaining what a theory is about, or just almost churning out knowledge that you've remembered about SBL is not going to score you marks in the SBL exam. So you think, well, what is? This exam is all about application. It's all about your technique. It's all about relating it to the scenario and the questions that you've been set on the day. So just make sure you're not one of these people who do this, and this is a lot of students do this in SBL, which is just to almost recite a load of things that they've learned from a textbook and hope that it gets marks. That isn't how to pass SBL. This is all about applying your knowledge to the scenario. So this was from the examiner report just recently, September, December 2024. But that is in every single examiner report. Yeah, it says the same thing. Don't just recite knowledge. So what I'm going to do, as I promised, is show you this in the context of an exam question. Now, this is from the September, December 2024 exam. It was a company called Bigo. Now, actually, the context of the scenario and the question, I'm not particularly worried about. I just want to use this as an example. But just to give you a bit of an overview, this was a company based on Uber, so like the taxi company. So they do, this Bigo company offered like taxi services, and they were considering branching out into doing food delivery as well, which in the UK, we have something called Uber Eats. So it was quite similar to Uber and that sort of setup. Again, I'm not particularly worried about the context. But what this question said or asked us to do, prepare a report for the CFO, which assesses their current service portfolio to determine appropriate strategies to manage the portfolio effectively. And then you had some analysis skills in there as well. So it was about assessing their service portfolio and then determining appropriate strategies. And this is the exhibit that you were provided in the exam. Hopefully you can see that. And again, you don't need to read it all or anything, but just want to point out what this was about. And it was just an overview of their current offering. So they did ride sharing. So that's where people share taxis, ride hailing, where you get your own taxi, micromobility, which was like using scooters or bikes, and then business services were more for like courier type things. So that's their current portfolio. And actually you saw a lot of that stuff from their precinct. Then what they also gave you was market activity. So they gave you market growth rates for each of these. And that's showing you the general market, how it's growing. And then they talked about competition, and they gave you some figures there about market share. So you could see Bigo's I've highlighted in orange. That's their market share for each of those. So this was the scenario, and you had to analyze that portfolio and then talk about strategies. Now, is anyone thinking, is there a theory that jumps out to you? Does anyone want to put into the attendee chat what theory you might be thinking about there from an SBL perspective, and what sort of model might you be able to use as part of your answer here? So you've got market growth, you've got market share. Is there any model that's springing out to mind when you see this? Brilliant. Yeah, great. Judith, you got there first. You're the winner. I don't know what the prize is, but you're the winner. But loads of you are saying BCG. So the Boston Consulting Group Matrix. This feels like that sort of question, doesn't it? So what a lot of students will do is they'll fall into the trap of then telling the examining team, telling the markers all about the BCG matrix. They'll tell them the history, who started it, when it was founded, what all the different things mean. That is not going to get you any marks. It's about applying it. So what I suggest you do in a question like this is go through, set up headings, and headings, by the way, very, very useful, very important, for each of the different products or services in this case that they offer. So I would have set it up like this, and then under each, I'd discuss market growth, I'd discuss market share, and then I'd discuss an appropriate strategy for each of them. So I'll go through that, and I would structure it like that for each of them, and I'd do the same for all of them. I'd go discuss market growth or market activity, if you want to call it that. I'd talk about market share or competition, and then I'd discuss a strategy under each of those. Now, if you wanted to use BCG, which you guys said, you could. Yeah, you could mention the fact that this one appears to be a cash cow, or this one appears to be a problem child, or this one's a star. Whatever it is, you could have talked about those, but you didn't necessarily have to. Yeah, if you talked about general strategy, how they could improve that, that's fine. So don't use the models as like, I'm just going to recite this model and do that. Use them to help your answers if you need to, but don't just go ahead and just recite a load of knowledge about that. So you've got to be very careful with this. Sometimes having too much knowledge, too much technical knowledge can sort of hurt you with SBL. And I couldn't believe this when I read it in the examiner report. Some candidates made no reference to market growth and or market share at all. So some people just ignored that, and they just went, well, I'm just going to talk about generally their products and so on. They're giving you the answers almost, aren't they? They're giving you clues as to what to talk about, so you need to use them. So that's my first bit of advice around technique. Use the information in the scenario. Please make sure you're linking it to that and don't go too heavy with any models or any theory. So that's the first learning point from today. The next one, the next quote. Some candidates, but not you, continue to answer the task they wish they had been set rather than the task set in the exam. This is a common trait that often leads to exam failure. So when you're reading the requirements in SBL, you really need to slow down and make sure you're answering exactly what they've set. Now, it might be that you've prepared, maybe you've done some past exams, which is great, and you saw a question that was similar. And on exam day, you get all excited. You think, great, that's the same as the one I did last week. Off I go. It's only afterwards you realize, oh, actually, that word was slightly different, or they asked me to do something slightly different in that question. So you've got to be very careful that you're answering exactly what they have set. The other risk is that you overanalyze the pre-seen material, and then you use the pre-seen, which comes out next Tuesday, by the way, for the December exams, comes out on the 18th, a week today. People overdo that and then almost pre-prepare their answers. So on exam day, you've almost learned an answer and then you just type it out. That's not okay. You need to react on exam day to what they've given you. You can't pre-prepare for these. So as a prime example of this, same scenario, same question, which was BIGO. And they asked us to come up with 4 non-financial key performance indicators. And it said this was for the food delivery service, and you had to communicate them in an appropriate tone. Now, a couple of points in there. The fact it says non-financial key performance indicators, lots of people will miss that. And lots of people start talking about revenue and market growth and all this. You've got to be careful. If it says something like that and you start talking about financial, you're going to miss a load of marks. You're just wasting time. So that was the first thing. The second thing was that in the pre-seen for this one, so this was the information that came out 2 weeks before the exam, they gave you some KPIs for BIGO, including these on the screen there. So things like revenue, driver satisfaction, rides completed. So students had prepared that and they were like, oh, KPIs, I know all about KPIs. I've got a load of them in the pre-seen. This is brilliant. And then what they did was use these in their answer. But that's not okay. It was KPIs for a new service, food delivery. It's a completely different thing. Whereas in the exhibit that they gave you on exam day, this wasn't in the pre-seen, this was provided on exam day for the food delivery, they talked in here about allowing users to order food. They talked about it provides new driver opportunities. It talks about new relationships with local businesses, data availability. It's giving you the answers. The answers are in this exhibit. So you just needed to extract them and then use those to form some great KPIs. So for example, some KPIs, you could have talked about customer satisfaction because it talks about users. We might have mentioned new driver opportunities, new business relationships, and data availability. Again, all I've done there is select 4 things from that exhibit that they mentioned that would make really nice non-financial KPIs. So just, again, be careful. Don't overdo the pre-scene. You've got to really read the requirement carefully and use the information provided on exam day. And with KPIs, by the way, explaining what the KPI is and then justifying why it's a good one for BGO is a great structure. So explain and justify, really, really good when you're doing KPIs. Now, this was the examiner report from that exact question. Many candidates, not just one, but many, merely took 4 of the KPIs from the pre-scene and rewrote them to try and adapt them. And it said this was particularly evident in measures such as driver satisfaction and rides completed. Rides completed doesn't make any sense for a food delivery company, does it? They're saying how many taxi journeys have they completed? That's not what they were asking for. So people try and use pre-prepared answers and it just doesn't work. So make sure you're reacting. Be flexible, be adaptable, and be ready to answer anything that's thrown at you in the exam. Right, everyone okay so far? Just give me a thumbs up. So we've been through 2 really, really important things. That is about answering the exact requirement set, but also making sure that we are always linking to the exhibits and referring to what's in the exam. Is everyone okay so far? Everyone give me a thumbs up or whatever you fancy, just to let me know you're all right. Super, thank you very much. Lovely, right. Moving on then to some strategies. Now, this is where it's going to really help improve your answers. So again, I can tell people this over and over again, but still when we're marking questions in SBL, so when our own students are doing questions and things, yeah, we'll still be occasionally seeing answers that we just go like, I can't believe you're still doing this. So some smart strategies. The first one, again, comes from an examiner comment. In most tasks, there was insufficient application of the relevant information provided in the answers. So people are still not relating it enough to the scenario. And this, again, was from the examiner report. So similar to what we were talking about just a moment ago. So what I thought I'd do is do a little exercise with you. I'll get you guys to do a little bit of work. And this is about relating it to the scenario. And what I've done is made up a little example, gourmet gatherings, I've called it. This follows on from the BGO task, but I've just made this bit up. So they're a ready meal manufacturer. So they're microwave meals in Beeland, which is where BGO are based. And it says they've built their reputation on quality and timely delivery using their own fleet of specialized vehicles, which are refrigerated and reliable drivers. But then they've experienced rapid sales growth, rising fuel costs, and shareholder pressure to increase their low profit margins. And they're now considering outsourcing their deliveries to a well-known third-party logistics company. And your task, analyze the potential benefits and risks of outsourcing GG's delivery operations. So that's the task. So we've got a little bit of context, admittedly 2 paragraphs, whereas in the exam, you'd probably have far more than that. But I just want you to get thinking about not just doing general pros and cons of or benefits and risks of outsourcing, but using the information in the scenario. So what I've done is on the left, written a poor answer. So this is one where people haven't related it to the scenario. So for example, costs may be reduced as outsourcing is cheaper than keeping operations in-house due to economies of scale. Factually, that is good. Yeah, that is that's good understanding of the benefits of outsourcing. Well done to that person. But it's not the right way to approach an SBL question. Let's see another one. Growth is easier when outsourcing, as the third party may have a wider pool of resources, which allows the company to expand faster. Again, Okay, yeah, that's valid point, but there's nothing about this context, the context of this scenario. And the other one, slower operations. This is a risk may occur if outsourced, as the third party is working with several other companies and may not prioritize our business. So can you see all 3 points there are valid? They're, yeah, again, what they've said is fine, but they're not related to the scenario. So what we're going to do now is fix these. So does anyone want to share in the chat? How do you remember? You may not remember the scenario, but it says costs may be reduced due to economies of scale. How could we make that relevant to our company? Why do we care about that? So what is always a good question to ask yourself about this one, which is about reducing costs. Some of you guys, I've just seen in the chat, some of you are talking about that, which is great. And yeah, not linking to the scenario you've mentioned, which is very true. Anyone remember like how we could say, yeah, so like talking about prices, yeah, prices rising, James, is a good shout. So linking to that sort of information. Brilliant. Yeah, low profit margins. Yeah, Helen and Jessica just before that, I think, said that. So yeah, that's a nice way to talk about it. So what we could say instead is something like this, which I said costs may reduce as the delivery company, I'm now making it relevant to this, will benefit from economies of scale. This will help to improve GG's low profit margins, which will reduce pressure from shareholders. So that's, there you go. Like Patrick, you just mentioned very similar thing at the bottom there, didn't you? So yeah, exactly that. So make sure you're relating it to the firm. And yeah, mentioning the company by name does help as part of that, doesn't it? But we need to make sure we are really linking to the exhibit as well. So that is now a much nicer answer. And it's not much longer, is it? It's only a few words more, but I've now made it relevant to the company. And then growth is easier when outsourcing. So I could say growth will be easier as GG can access the delivery company's pool of drivers and vehicles. And then I link that by talking about this will help them to fulfill growing customer orders. Again, I'm using something that they've mentioned. I'm not just saying generally this will allow them to expand faster. I'm using that exhibit to help me. And this makes your life easier, by the way. This isn't just me saying you need to do this. It is a lot easier. And then slower operations at the bottom there, working with several other companies who may not prioritize our business. So there I said, slower deliveries may be an issue if the well-known delivery company is busy with other deliveries. And then I said, why is that important? I said, well, GG's customers are used to timely deliveries, it mentions. And so delays could reduce the reputation, which some of you talked about as well in the chat. So do you see that transition? In all of my related ones, as you guys have said, I've mentioned the company, I've talked about deliveries, I've talked about specific things from the exhibits now, which make those nice. They are related to the scenario. They are much, much better. So you need to practice that. You've got a few weeks left. Keep practicing. How do I turn that into an answer that is relevant to this company? And it's not just generic. It's not me just reciting a load of pros and cons. They are using the exhibits to my advantage, and that will really, really help. Okay, so that's the first one. Relate it to the scenario. And again, I've mentioned that several times now, but that's a really sort of clear way of showing you how to do that. The next one from the examiner. Whatever the format required by the task, the recipient will be helped by an answer that is presented and structured clearly with headings throughout, or headers throughout the answer. So that is from the examining team. I know several of you guys have taught AFM as well, or you've attended my webinars for AFM, or you've been on my courses. This is true for AFM, it's true for SBL, it's true for AAA, it's true for every subject you do. Make your answers look nice, and you will score more marks. So this is from the recent examiner report, and this is March, June 2025. But again, it's valid for any of them. Now, this one, here's the answer I just wrote out. So they're my answers that I put there, the ones that are quite related to the scenario. That is genuinely how lots of students write their answers. I don't know about you guys, but if I even receive an email that looks like that, or a WhatsApp message, I look at that and go, oh, I don't want to read that. Yeah, if you get something like that, oh no, I can't be bothered reading all of that. Like that's a lot to get through there. This is exactly the same answer. I labeled it benefits and then risks with spaces in between each of my points. Look at that on the right. That's exactly the same content as a marker. And remember, these markers are going to be marking your scripts over December. Some of them might be celebrating Christmas. They might be wanting to be out socializing and seeing friends and family. Instead, they're going to have to be marking your SBL scripts. You want to make their life as easy as possible. And if you want to make them happy, make your answer look nice. So go with that one on the right. You can see, imagine you have to mark that. Imagine you're the one sat there and you are having to mark hundreds of these scripts. You want to read that one on the right, don't you? I want to read that. I think, oh, this looks good. And can you also see, I've started each paragraph with a keyword, like costs, growth, quality, slower. Yeah, it's like bang, 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 bang. There's no waffle. This is to the point, and I've been really concise. And again, that's then a really, really nice structure. So make it look nice, and you will score more marks. Now, this is another thing that some people do, which the examiner really, really doesn't like. Another real pet hate, which is copying and pasting bits from the pre-scene or the exhibits into your answers without adding value. Don't do that. Just don't copy and paste big chunks from the pre-scene. I probably wouldn't copy and paste anything. It's just a waste of time. So you're not going to get marks for it. So please don't copy and paste big things there, because this is going to be, again, a real risk for some people. And another thing I just want to mention is avoiding speculation. So here's another little fictional scenario. And I said, GG were very successful in Beeland with their ready meals. And now they think there could be substantial growth in the neighboring country of Sealand. In case anyone's Googling where these countries are, by the way, they are fictional. So don't worry if you've not heard of any of these countries. They are completely made up. And Sealand has a different business environment. There are distinct cultural preferences, a volatile government, and different regulatory requirements compared to Beeland. And then the question says, identify the major risks that GG may face if they decide to expand operations into Sealand. Now, this is, again, I've made this scenario up. This is me sort of really spelling it out, but often those bits will be in your exhibits. You know, maybe a bit more spread out with a bit more sort of padding around it, but the answers will be in there. And what some students will do is they'll choose to ignore the free answers that you've been given. It says about cultural preferences, volatile government, regulatory requirements. And what some students will do is they'll speculate and they'll say, Sealand might have different currency, which presents foreign exchange risks. Or maybe they have more vegans than Beeland who may not want to buy ready meals that may contain meat and dairy products. Or maybe Sealand might have a big rivalry with Beeland, which means consumers don't want to buy meals that will support their enemy, Beeland. And some customers may boycott the GG products. You know, I'm going a little bit over the top with this, but people do this. Students make up their own sort of scenarios and start going, oh, what if this? Oh, imagine that. Whoa, whoa, whoa. Let's just take a step back. The answers were in the exhibit. This student who's written these answers has chosen to ignore the things that are definitely happening in Sealand and make up their own, which in some ways is sort of quite, it's quite creative about this, the rivals Beeland. But why are you doing that? It's not going to get you marks, and you're just ignoring the easy things. Use the scenario. So cultural preferences are different. So they may have different tastes. Volatile government might look to impose tariffs or block international trade. And regulations are different. So we need to understand and comply with local regulations, or they could be fined or maybe stop operating. So we're now using the exhibit to help our answers. So don't speculate, use the exhibits. And that's going to be a much, much better strategy. Okay, we're doing well. And what I want to talk about now is timings. I've seen a few of you put some timings questions into the chat panel. For some of you, that'll be the exact time, actually, won't it? 10:29. So that's funny that watch isn't live. I haven't managed to do that. The technology is not that advanced. But what I want to talk about now is how you can stay in control of your time during the exam. The first thing I'll say is you need to allocate your timings and be careful with your time management. So I suggest you allocate 1.9 minutes per mark. Now, the exam itself is 1.95. If you allocate 1.9, that tends to just give you a little bit of time, a little bit of leeway. You might have a spare 5 minutes at the end just to wrap up anything that you need to. And my other tip, which I really like, is to write down the finish time. Look at the clock in the exam software and write down what time do I need to finish this task. So work it out. You might need to use a calculator if you mental maths isn't brilliant. But to be fair, even 1.9 minutes per mark, you probably will need to use a calculator. Just write down, I'm going to finish this at when the timer gets to 2 hours and 20 minutes left or whatever. So for example, let's say this is the KPI task I showed you earlier. What we do, we got 12 marks for the KPIs and then 4 professional skills marks for communication that are in the right tone. I'd combine those, by the way. I wouldn't separate out the professional marks because you're going to do that throughout your answer. So 12 plus 4, 16 marks. Times that by 1.9, it's roughly double, isn't it? Just slightly below double. And that's going to be 30 minutes. And then, as I said, what I'd then do is I'd write down on my answer page. So maybe when you do your heading, write down, I am going to stop this part at 2:23. And then you do as much. And everyone always says, like, oh, how much do I need to write? What you do is you write as much as you can in that time. Now, in this one, it's 4 KPIs. So you're going to be doing 4 things. But yeah, you might want to keep adding bits or just writing a bit more until your time's up. And then you're going to move on to the next part. So really be disciplined. Don't spend ages on one particular thing because you've got to make sure you're being very strict with your timings. So that's the first thing. Be really strict and make sure you're allocating your time carefully. The second thing is about being concise. So here is an answer that, again, like maybe this is slightly exaggerated, but I do see people doing this quite a lot, which is waffle. So this student, furthermore, Exco should consider the consequences of potentially introducing this new strategy, which could be interpreted, rightly or wrongly, as contradicting their well-publicized and celebrated sustainability policies. This presumably would have the implication of negatively affecting wider stakeholders who demonstrate significant loyalty to the brand, at least in part due to their green credentials. Now, anyone who's ever done an essay maybe or something at university, like a dissertation, where you need to make sure that you're using up as many words as possible. So when you do this, and they say you need to write 10,000 words for this dissertation. That's how you write if you're trying to use up words, isn't it? That's how you write if you want to try and get down as many words as possible. In ACCA exams, that's not what you need to do. You should not be writing like that. You need to be concise. So turn that into, you ready? As if by magic, this. And my formatting is slightly off there, but you hopefully can see it. If I just we'll do the next one. It was right in the middle. Sustainability is key to customer loyalty. This strategy goes against Exco's green policies, so they could lose customers and sales as a result. Job done. Move on to the next one. So can you see that is saying the same thing? Sustainability is key to customer loyalty. This strategy goes against their green policies, so they could lose customers and sales as a result. So that there is how we're going to make that into that. Get used to being concise. Now, I saw a couple of comments in the chat there about ACCA's, the model answers for a lot of questions. Just bear in mind, a lot of the time, ACCA model answers aren't done to time. So you need to be much more concise than the model answers most of the time. So don't see ACCA's answers as what you can achieve in the time. That's if the examining team have got hours and hours to produce a really nice answer that goes into a lot of detail. In reality, and in the exam, you need to be more concise than that. You need to be really to the point. So yeah, just something like 2 or 3 lines, move on to the next one is fine. Don't overdo it because you'll just run out of time. So lots of short, concise points. And there are lots of words that people use that are real sort of time wasters as well, which is things like moreover and furthermore, and things like that. Like these are often things like words that people, often say is a bit of an issue. Okay, so that's the next one. That was be concise. My last one is my favorite catchphrase, which is just keep swimming. Now, I'm just going to turn off my camera because I think a few people are saying there's a little bit of lag with my camera. There is on mine as well. I was hoping it wasn't for you, but I'm just going to turn my camera off, which might freeze me in a funny place. But let's see. Hopefully that will improve if there was any lag going on here. Okay, so can you still hear me? Hopefully you can still hear me now. So this next one, just keep swimming, is the key thing. By which I mean, if you get stuck, move on. Now, there may well be bits in the exam where you are a little bit thinking, I'm not entirely sure what to do here. So that does happen. Like that happens, yeah, in nearly every ACCA exam there's ever been. There'll be things where people go, I'm not entirely sure about this, and it's a bit strange. What you need to do is just focus on something else. So just do this and get the easy marks. So go and get those easy marks. And yeah, there will be enough easy marks to pass this exam. So you need to just go and grab those. Don't forget, you can always come back to a requirement. So you can always leave it and come back to it later. Now, that said, I highly recommend that you do attempt absolutely everything in the exam. If you leave it blank, you will definitely get 0, won't you? If you leave that section completely blank, the markers cannot give you anything. But if you've at least tried it, if you've done something, then you might be able to pick up a few marks. So do attempt everything. But as I say, if you're a bit stuck, don't waste too much time on it. Just be disciplined and move on to the next bit. Get the easy marks and you're going to be fine. But yeah, the key message is just keep going. No matter what happens, even if you're not 100% convinced about an answer, just move on to the next bit and keep going and you will be fine. Okay. Next up, study and revision plan. What are we going to be doing over the next few weeks? And I saw a few people asking about the, like when the pre-scene's coming out and all those sorts of things. So here's a bit of a plan over the next few weeks. So this is this week, the 10th of November. And what I'd be recommending you do at this stage of your studies is practicing past exam questions. ACCA are very generous on the ACCA practice platform. There are loads of past exams, including BIGO, the one I've been showing you actually. So again, you can go and do some past exam questions. Go and get used to the style, get used to the topics that they're testing. Also, work on your exam technique and layout. Now, I know loads of you, when you're doing these practice questions, just write out like bullet points, or you write out a list. Yeah, I say that, I would have said that. Yeah, I'll just write down a few things. You need to work on writing out full paragraphs. You know, like I just showed you with headings and spaces in between. You need to make sure you are structuring it as you would on exam day. Okay, sometimes I know, I'm being realistic, people don't have that much time to study. And I know doing a full exam can take a long time, but you do need to do it occasionally and write it out in full. Then what I suggest you do is recap the theory as and when you need it. So do lots of past exams. If a topic comes up that you can't remember, that's the time to go back and look over it. But don't just read loads of theory now. This is all about practicing. With not long to go until exam day, it's all about practicing questions and getting that technique sorted. And yeah, look through past exams, see what came up, see what types of questions there have been tested recently, because that'll give you a real good idea as to what's going to be in there. And also those examiner articles. You know, I keep bringing up quotes from the examiner reports. They're so useful, and you'll see the same thing repeated over and over again. So just make sure that you are make sure you're reading those and understanding what's in there. Okay, then the week after. The week commencing the 17th of November. The big day for you guys who are sitting in December is the pre-scene is released on the 18th, which is Tuesday, the 18th of November. It will get released in the morning. And that will be all about the company that your actual exam is going to be centered around. So what I would suggest you do is read that pre-scene and yourself attempt a SWOT and a PESTLE. So have a look through that pre-scene and have a go at doing a SWOT, so strengths, weaknesses, opportunities, and threats, and a PESTLE analysis. Do it yourself. Now, there'll be loads of these available. People will be putting content out. They'll be putting SWOTs and PESTLEs out there for people to use. Using someone else's just doesn't really help. It's a waste of, like, reading someone else's isn't going to help you. You need to do it yourself. It's the process of creating that really, really helps. So go and do that yourself and break down what the key things are. And then consider what topics you might be examined. Now, you've got to be a bit careful because they can test anything. But you know, if there's a big section in your pre-scene about cyber risk in the country that this company is based in, you probably want to think about revising a bit of cybersecurity, for example. So it's worth just considering what's going to be there. And at that point, you can go and look at the technical articles. There is a huge bank of SBL technical articles. So have a think, right, what areas are going to be, potentially could be examined based on the situation they're in, and then go and have a look at some technical articles. Again, just to caveat that with anything could be tested, so you be careful not to question spot, but it'd be sensible, it'd be prudent for you to go and have a look over technical articles that you think are relevant to the case that you've been presented with. And then have a go at least one mock exam. So ideally, if you're with a tuition provider, then that's great. Using a mock that's based on the pre-seen is going to be absolutely brilliant. I know not everyone can. You could always just do a past exam. So you could just pick any past exam. I know it won't be based on your pre-seen, but it's still really valuable just to go and practice that. And then the week commencing the 24th of November, this is when you're starting to get excited. Exam day is looming. Do another mock. So attempt at least another full mock exam to time. So do a whole exam from start to finish. And again, do it without your notes. Do it exactly as you would on exam day. Reread that pre-seen once more. So have a look back over that pre-seen information. What I would say is don't overdo the pre-seen. Don't over-analyze it and waste too much time, because the pre-seen is a bit like preparation. Imagine you're doing a job interview. The pre-seen is like the research you do for that job interview. If on the interview day, the interviewer then asks you a question that you weren't quite expecting, and you just recite a load of stuff that you've prepared anyway, they're going to think, well, that's not really answering the question. And that's the same here. So don't overanalyze and over-prepare the pre-seen. Be familiar with it, understand it, know the industry a bit. But then on exam day, it's all about using the exhibits they present you. So don't over-analyze that pre-seen. And then keep practicing exam questions. Keep doing past exam questions to time. Get used to it. And then in the final few days, plan your exam day. So you guys who are doing it in an exam center, make sure you know where you're going and the route. Make sure you're relaxing. So make sure that you're starting to really take breaks, relax, get some sleep. This exam, again, it's not particularly theory-based. So you revising every single model there's ever been is going to be really hard work, but you need to relax and be fresh, ready to react to whatever is presented on exam day. And start visualizing success. Start believing in yourself. Start thinking, I can do this. This is achievable. And start thinking, right, who am I going to tell when I pass? What am I going to do once I've qualified? Really start thinking positively, because again, that's really going to help with your mindset. So just be really positive and thinking, yes, I can do this. So as you can see, the general theme here over the next 2 or 3 weeks is just practicing questions. Don't go over loads of theory. You could get really lost in revising all the theory. It's all about your technique. Practice questions. Use the tips and tricks I've given you in this webinar around your layout, being concise, using headings, using the exhibits to your advantage, and really practice that so that then you are fully prepared for exam day when it comes up. And again, no matter what they throw at you, if you've got good technique, you're going to be in a great, great position. Okay. I'm going to turn my camera back on. Hopefully the lag is slightly better. We'll see. Well, I drank that cup of tea about 10 seconds ago, so I think the lag is still slightly there, but it's okay because it doesn't matter too much. I'm going to go into the Q&A in just a sec. Just before I do start taking your questions, a few things that I highly recommend that you look at before exam day. ACCA practice platform, make sure you're using that to you look at those past exams, and there's specimen exams. There's also the pre-December mock. So really use that. You've got ACCA Study Resources YouTube channel, and that will include this webinar. So anyone who missed a bit, or if you did have any technical issues, you'll be able to see that. As Hassan said at the start, I've just launched a new SBL YouTube channel as well, alongside Ben Wilson, who I'm working with at ACCA for some SBL content at the moment. It's called Club SBL. So check that out, because we're going to be posting lots of videos of us going through things. We'll be doing some pre-scene analysis for your live pre-scene as well. So make sure you check that out. So Club SBL on YouTube is another resource that is really going to be great for you guys. And then you've got ACCA Study Hub, and that's really good for the technical bits. And again, plenty of bits there as and when you need to revise that theory. Okay. Let's go into some questions then. I'm going to just load up some questions from you guys. And here we go. Right. Okay, so Alexandria has said, how is doing mock papers going to help you in the final paper, because it's two completely different industries and the question asked are so different? Really good question, Alexandra, and it's one that I get a lot. A lot of people saying, well, what's the point in doing past exams if the past exams about Bigo, who are a taxi company, and then your pre-scene that comes out next week is about a florist who make bouquets of flowers. And by the way, I don't know what it is, so if that turns out to be true, then that is pure guesswork. It's because I looked outside and saw a flower. So yeah, how can you, preparing for a company about taxis isn't going to be the same as a florist. How is that going to help? It really, really is. Doing past exams, this exam is all about the skills that you need to pass. It doesn't really matter about the industry. You know those KPIs I showed you earlier? Yeah, they could easily have been about a florist as well as a taxi. It's about using the exhibits. It's about structuring your answer properly. It's about answering the requirements. It's all about those skills. So the fact that you're doing that one on taxis and that one on flowers doesn't really matter. You know, the exhibits will be different. Of course they will. The words you're using will be different. But the skill of breaking down the requirement, extracting information from the exhibits and putting them into your answer in a clear and concise way, that will not change no matter what the industry. So you need to just practice. Again, it doesn't really matter too much. The other thing, Alexandra, is I guess I could ask you, like, what's the other option? You don't practice any questions until the pre-scene gets released 2 weeks before the exam. Then, and there aren't going to be any mock exams sort of available on the open market. Again, some course providers will provide them, but you wouldn't have much time. You wouldn't have any time to do anything then, would you? So you just wouldn't be practicing. So you sort of have to, but also it's really valuable. So yeah, don't be afraid to use past exams on different industries. It's not a problem at all. As a little tip, when your pre-scene does come out, what you could then do is look at past exams on ACCA's practice platform that are in a similar industry. So if it is a florist and previously there's been a garden center, for example, maybe you go, okay, they're sort of similar. Yeah. Or even if it's just some sort of, maybe like a logistics company, like you might want to find one that's quite similar and focus on that. That might help as well. Christo said, will there be any direct theory questions? No, so they're not going to say specific, or it's unlikely they'll say specifically explain the BCG model for this company. It's not going to be about that. It's more going to be like the question I showed you, analyze this company's product portfolio. If you want to use BCG in there, great, you can. And they did in the model answers, but you don't necessarily have to. So it's not going to be do a pestle analysis. Instead, it's more likely to be, discuss the external risks that this company is facing. And if you want to use a pestle to structure that, then go for it. So, unlikely to be direct theory questions, and more likely to be it's about using them as and when you need to. So G Quinn, you said, how do I tackle the wide SBL syllabus? It seems there's plenty to cover. It's a huge syllabus. As I mentioned at the start and throughout this webinar, this isn't a particularly theoretical heavy exam though. This is more about technique. There are things that will come up in this exam that you literally can't revise for. It might be analyze this company's, they're posting for a new job. Here's the job description. Analyze that job description and add new things to it. You can't revise that. You've just got to react to what you've been presented with. So what I'd say is don't worry too much about knowing all of the theory. It's more about being able to apply it and being able to tackle questions. So it's more about question practice than it is about the theory. Another question, am I correct to assume the questions in the exam will always link to an exhibit given in the exam and not the pre-scene? Yes, there will always be an exhibit that's relevant to the question that you've been set. You can go back and refer to the pre-scene if you want to, and if you feel like it's relevant. But my order of preference would always be the exhibit first, and then if I'm a bit stuck or whatever, then maybe go back to the pre-scene. But I'd always go with the exhibits first. Fair said about The professional marks. Now, the professional marks are sort of embedded with each of the questions. So whereas in other subjects, like with AFM, I always suggest that people do assumptions sort of separately, really sort of doing extra things. They're sort of a bit different in SBL, and they're sort of built into each of the requirements. And you might have seen in that communication marks for the KPIs, it said making sure the KPIs are in a tone that is suitable for the whoever it was we were writing the KPIs for. So you're not being really technical. So it's things like that. It's just read them, and it gives you just a bit of a clue. Just make sure that you're not going to write anything really, really complicated here, because it's for someone who doesn't understand sort of loads of technical jargon. So it's more bits like that. Just read what they tell you to do. They sort of almost say, yeah, professional marks available for doing it like that. So that's fine. In terms of specific format, they sometimes ask you to do slides. So you have to do like a few, almost like bullet points in the slide, and then you have to add notes underneath, which is then more of like your normal answer. So there's a little couple of bits like that to look out for, but yeah, generally it's sort of fairly standard answers. So I wouldn't use bullet points within your answers usually. That was the next question actually, was are we allowed to use bullet points? Definitely use headings to break up your answers, but I would then do short, concise paragraphs. So don't worry about doing anything else. And then the report structure, you want to do like a to from subject date at the top, report structure, sort of fairly standard that you've hopefully seen in other subjects as well. Conclusions and recommendations. Yeah, again, like you're never going to get penalized for doing that. So if they ask you to do it, obviously you will. But in bigger questions, yeah, if ever there's like a benefits and risks of something, it's probably a good idea to put a quick recommendation at the end, and that will help with that sort of like evaluation professional mark as well. So make sure you do that. There's a question: if we can't apply a model, but you answer that something that's relevant, will it be accepted? Yeah. If you don't know there's a model, or you've forgotten the model, as long as you say something relevant, yeah, you'll still pick up the marks. So that's not a problem. Is it better to leave a point half finished or to write nothing? You're better off writing something. Yeah, there's no negative marking. They can't take marks off you. So if you've written something, you might still pick up a mark, but if you write nothing, you're definitely not going to get the mark. So yeah, I'd always say just, do your best, and ideally try and finish it, of course, but it's not a problem if you, if it's better to leave it there. Nadia, the pre-scene will be available on ACCA's website. They'll publish that on Tuesday morning, so you can go and find it then. So you can download it, you can analyze it, and everything else on Tuesday. Innocent, you said, how can you tell what model to use? That comes with experience, seeing questions and doing loads of practice questions and knowing sort of the context of the models. For example, if it is about external factors, knowing that pestle could be useful. But as we just talked about, it's not necessarily about your knowledge of models. As long as you can sort of talk about it and make sensible points, you'll pick up marks anyway. So yeah, don't obsess too much about using models, but they might be able to help you. Nyasha, you said, what's the ideal length to score 2 marks, and what is defined as a well-explained point? Right, good question. So you can in theory get 2 marks for a really well-explained point, but I tend to suggest sort of almost just doing 1 mark per paragraph. So just aim, if it asks you to do, if it's 6 marks, I'll aim to write 6 paragraphs. So I'll be nice, short, concise, like you saw earlier, like 2 or 3 lines, but really to the point, and aim for 6 of those rather than going into loads of depth in any particular bit. So yeah, go for that sort of short, concise, to the point type paragraphs, but of course related to the scenario, as we mentioned a few times. What else have we got here? I just saw another one. Yeah, I think I've answered a couple of those already. Can I still pass? Yeah, if you don't know the model or the theory, can I still pass by applying the information? Yep, absolutely. How do you suggest we attempt the questions to get the professional marks? I think I just covered that as well, Anna. So yeah, look at what the professional marks are asking you to do, and just making sure how to do that. Adrika, can you tell me what to do when you run out of points? So move on to the next requirement if you've run out of things to do. move on to the next section, and then use the exhibit for clues, I'd say as well. So if you run out of ideas, don't sit there sort of trying to force things. Move on to the next requirement and then come back to it later. But yeah, use the exhibits because there will always be clues in there as well. No calculations, Caroline, in this one, no, you're not going to need to do like an NPV. They might give you an NPV and you have to sort of discuss it or something, but you're not going to have to calculate it. Save that one for AFM. I've got loads of videos on that. Yeah, so if you need NPVs and IRR, more of an AFM type thing. But yeah, it's going to be more discussing stuff than anything else in SBL. And then, Anna, you said, have I got any advice on analyzing the pre-scene? As I said, do it yourself. So there will be stuff out there for you to read and for you to look at. But before you do that, I want you to really do it yourself, because yeah, other people telling you what they think doesn't really help. It's about you reading it, you processing it, make notes, highlight stuff if you can, do a SWOT, do a pestle, really understand it and form your own thoughts on it. And then, yeah, just don't overdo it. Yeah, don't overanalyze it. I think some people can go into so much detail. Again, this is just, they're giving you some background information about the industry. This isn't going to be an exam on how well you know that document. It's more about just giving you some background information. So yeah, just don't overdo it would be my big tip. Okay, right, there are all the questions that were allocated to me. I know there are several more. As we said, unfortunately, we can't get through them all, but we've covered quite a lot there. So thanks ever so much for attending live. Thanks for all your input. And as I say, I wish you the best of luck with the SBL exam. As I said all throughout, make sure you relate it to the exhibits, keep it really concise, make it look nice, and you're going to stand a really, really good chance of passing. So best of luck with it, and take care.
All right, thank you, Andrew. So this brings us to the end of this session. I hope you have been able to pick up a lot of techniques there and you found it helpful. So before I wrap up completely, just a quick reminder that, look out for the resources in the resource section in front of your screen. There are handy resources that will be very helpful for your exams. And for all those who have experienced any interruptions, connectivity issues, or were not able to listen to the session because of any particular reason, do not worry. Since you have registered for this session, you will get an email, and through that, you will be having a link to access the recording of this webinar. The session was recorded, and you will be able to watch it later. A very special thank you to Andrew for helping us out in the exam technique part, and also to the backend colleagues who were supporting with the technical aspect of this session. A very big thank you to all of you for attending and taking time out. On behalf of ACCA, I wish you all the very best of luck for your December 25 exams. Thank you and goodbye.